Hello, I'm Greg, EG.IdrA Fields, and this is an EG replay review. Today we'll be looking at me versus ZvT from IPL 4. Let's get into the game. You see me as the blue zerg in the bottom left, and ZvT as the red zerg in the bottom left, and ZvT as the blue Terran in the top right. And this is the map Sanshorn Mists. It's one of the newer maps that hasn't seen a lot of play on the pro circuit. I believe it was part of the ESV Korean Weekly, or one of those online tournaments. However, it hadn't seen a lot of play in the MLGs, GSLs, IPLs before this tournament. So it's a map that some players don't have a ton of experience on. I had not played it a lot before the week leading up to it. But it's a pretty solid standard macro map. A takeable, but not easily defensible third base, and kind of an interesting center where you have this high ground on both sides of the central position. Also, you have this high ground kind of in front of the neutral area, in front of your opponent's natural. So lots of little things in the map architecture that can be taken advantage of. And in this game, we'll see a dynamic that was present throughout the ZvTs in that tournament in IPL 4. Which is the quick Roach Ling pressure, quick third base versus the very fast banshee play from the Terran. We saw Bomber, ZvT, and MMA all use this build in my group. We also saw Stefano face it a number of times with very similar openings. My build specifically is a very quick 8-ish Roach pressure while taking the third base. It's done off around 32 drones, so relatively low econ. However, you produce almost pure drones behind it, unless you see the opportunity for zergling pressure. So it's not an all-in build at all. It's just pressure in order to secure more economy. I feel it's a very solid build. It's very useful in the current meta game where many Terrans are just exceptionally greedy, and even without committing too much to the pressure, you can do a lot of damage. Here we see only 2 Marines, Reactor, Hellion, no bunkers up front. And that's pretty much all he has. He doesn't really have any kind of defense as he goes up to starport. So there's a good timing window there where Zerg is capable of doing a lot of damage. As we see here, I'm just holding off the 2 queens. This is kind of a bluff. Most Zergs will have additional Zerglings back here, or a queen, or something of that sort. So Terran feels really risky about running in, getting trapped on creep, taking additional damage, when in fact I don't really have anything. I'm just being very greedy and getting up to Roaches right away without any other kind of defense. No Spinecrawler, no Zerglings. So yeah, it's kind of a bluff. It's just counting on the fact that most Zergs would be more prepared than I am at that point. And those 2 initial Hellions are too important for ZvT to actually lose, or to risk. So here we see the attack come out, and we see me immediately begin drone production, also sending out a drone to take my third right away. And the goal of this is to just secure 3 bases pretty quickly, get a good drone economy up, and then head towards ground production. Make Roaches, Lings, Infestors, get upgrades, and just head into the macro game, head into the mobile game. And here we saw, as I said, he was being very greedy. He's just now getting up to Cloak Banshee with almost nothing behind him. So I did a ton of damage. Got SCV kills, forced a lift on the natural, killed the bunker there. Also got sight of the Banshee. So we see the Evolution Chamber immediately come up. You want to go towards Evolution Chamber anyway, as upgrades are very, very important in this style. Spore Crawlers go down immediately. This Spore Crawler is very important. That creep spread that I started early on, and then get the Spore here, as it's very close to the third base. I can run it up and put it down here. Also heading over the second one. And here we can see this is a very important part of the game. I have done good damage. I am in very, very good shape if I can hold off this Banshee harass. So everything comes down to me securing this. And it's very, very important to do so, and it's worth an investment. It's worth over making Spore Crawlers and sending them down here, over making Queens, not having an inject here for a little bit of time, as I actually sent the Queen over to this base in order to help with the defense. And now I've stabilized. I got double upgrades going. I have my lair going. I have a number of queens. I have some creep spread going. So that turned out really, really well for me. I did damage at the little brief window of time where he was vulnerable with his build. And I have now secured myself versus the only form of aggression that he really has, which is these 3 Banshees. So from here, I'm free to just macro up and try and get as many drones as I can before his aggression kicks in. And he actually has 2 starports here for some reason. I did not notice that while we were in game. I think that's just a blunder by him. I'm not sure. He may be going for double medevacs without investing in reactor, but it doesn't really make sense. I think that is just a mistake. However, we see him putting down 2 more barracks, 2 reactors, and he's staying on 2 orbitals, which means he is going to be very aggressive off of 2 base. And I see this attack come out, and I immediately begin Roach production. That's the nice part about this opening. It gives you the potential to make Roaches, which are absolutely great at holding off mid-game aggression, particularly when you have this kind of creep spread. Zergling plus Roach is super, super efficient versus tank and low marine count armies. Terran, once they start to get a lot of marauders, a lot of tanks, and big massive upgraded marines, then Roaches are very inefficient. But in early game situations like this, it's great to have the opportunity to produce Roaches like that. Also coming is Infestors, which again are very, very good against early 2-base aggression. And there, that was a little mistake by me. I didn't realize I didn't have an Overseer with my army. I was trying to take out that Banshee. A little bit of a blunder there. And we can see that I have a queen on every hatchery injecting, and I also have these 4 queens out here. That's because he did have those 3 Banshees there. I know that they're going to be involved in the attack, and I know that I need anti-air, and that my Infestors will not be done in time. So I got those additional queens. They help with creep spread. He is out in the middle of the map, so I'm not going to have great creep spread. However, I do have it this far at least, as far as I can get it. Very, very important. Creep, incredibly powerful in push breaking. It just makes your units much more efficient against any kind of composition. They just engage much more quickly. And another big thing is, at this point, he only has those 2 orbitals. He doesn't have a ton of scan to actually go in here and clear the creep. So creep spread, even more effective than it normally is. And here we see him taking advantage of that high ground I mentioned outside of this little neutral area. Really good position for him. Here I come in, I hope to catch him off guard. He's kind of on creep. He wasn't completely sieged up. He doesn't have a big army, but he just had enough stuff that he whittled me down pretty well. However, this is the power of the Roaches. They're a lot beefier than Zerg units normally are in this situation this early on. So I was actually, I didn't remember clearing that up on the first attack. I actually killed a ton of units there, and at this point I have a much bigger economy than him. I have 3 bases. He's just now getting his 3rd orbital. I can afford to not win that fight. As long as I trade most of my army, I trade all of my army for most of his army, I can then reproduce faster than him and whittle down. Because I have a bigger economy, a bigger production, and I'm also much closer to the battle. I can reinforce more quickly. I also now have pathogen clans completed, I believe. Just starting now, so I will be able to start infestor production, which will absolutely shut this down. As 1 fungal on a clump of marines would just completely destroy it. But here again, we see the value of creep. He's pushing forward. He doesn't have the scans to clear this, so every engagement is now happening on creep. That's allowing me to get in there and get into engagement range with my Zerglings much more quickly than I normally would be able to. It makes it much more powerful. Also, the ability to surround these marines with the Zerglings is very important, as he has these tanks up here dealing splash damage, and he just now got combat shield on those marines. So those tanks were doing a ton of damage to his units before. And here again, the ability to surround on creep just absolutely destroys him. Additional Roaches coming in, taking fire, and cleaning him up very well on the ground. He does still have those Banshees flying around, but I have these Spore Callers here, so I'm able to retreat to that, and he's not going to do much damage with those. Once the Infestors are out, I will be able to kill them. And see here, I know that I've cleaned it up, so I immediately make 11 drones. I didn't feel that I was going to be able to go break him. I don't have good creep spread, and I know he has devoted quite a bit to unit production. He also has his Banshees sitting around. So I didn't feel that I'd actually be able to go and kill him. So instead, I took the opportunity to saturate my 3rd base, make a bunch of drones. At that point, I knew that I could not be attacked. I knew that I had a big army advantage, which means I can either be aggressive and go for the kill, or I should take advantage of the fact that I'm safe and try and play very economically. So I chose to play economically, and now we can see that I have a very, very big worker advantage. So taking advantage of the Zergling's mobility, I know that he doesn't have a huge army. It's not likely that he can defend and be out in the center of the map at the same time, so his 3rd base is likely to be vulnerable, and it was. So I go in there, get a bunch of SCV kills, force a lift, force his army back, take away his map control. So a lot of good things happening there for me. One big problem here is kind of don't have very good creep spread. He killed off a bunch of those tumors, only the 1 left. I'm not spreading that. I do have creep up here towards my potential 4th base, which is very good. You always want your bases connected by creep. It makes it much more easy to defend with a smaller army, as you don't have to fragment your army. You can just run around everywhere and defend at once. Also heading up towards hive tech. Here we see another attack coming out by him here, being very, very aggressive against Roach Ling Infestor style, which is kind of not common. Zerg is much better before maxed armies with this style. The Roaches are very supply inefficient, so once you start heading up towards max, the Roaches become less and less powerful. Also, he's pretty vulnerable to counterattacks. He doesn't really have the army to be able to split it up, so to be aggressive like this, a little bit risky by him. However, he does have this planetary up. Obviously, that helps him a ton. But a huge mistake by him. Oh, he actually did get those depots up. Almost a huge mistake by him there. But the Zergling count still scared him, still forced him to pull his army back. So that bought me extra time to continue my unit production. And As we can see, I'm actually making drones here. I know that I'm going to beat this because he has so few units relative to me that I feel safe continuing to establish an economy even behind this. And a big mistake here, I actually just messed up my hotkey. I didn't have that zergling flank come in, and I still beat him back pretty easily. So had those zerglings been involved, I would have absolutely destroyed him, as is still winning the battle. And those drones heading up, populating my 4th base. My hive has now completed. This is a good example of when to go Ultralisk. I feel that Ultralists are the much better defensive units than Broodlords. They're much more mobile, and on creep they're very, very powerful. Defensive situations you'll have to be on a creep as you're fighting closer to your base. So this, I think, is a good area to go Ultralists in, particularly because Terran does not have much of an economy. He's been fighting all game long. He's just not getting his base. He doesn't have those gases up even, not full SCV saturation. And Terran it really needs a massive economy, a gigantic army, and a lot of staying power to fight against Broodlords, or pardon me, against Ultralists. And the opposite situation, where Terran is being very defensive. They have a large army built up. They can be very cost efficient versus Ultras. That's when it's better to go Broodlords to actually try and break the turtle and fight for a long game army. So, as I said, since he was being aggressive, since he doesn't have much of an economy, I'm heading up towards Ultras, getting Carapace, just securing my 4th base at this point. This Banshee being very, very annoying in dealing with that. However, I do have these Infestors out. I can just go ahead and take that out, finally. I spent around all game doing a ton of damage for him. Also, this drop coming in here. But as always, static defense is incredibly important with this ground-based style. You don't have the responsive mutas to help deal with drops, so very important to have spine crawlers all over. Shutting down that attack that otherwise could have been very annoying for me. And we can see, still pretty much at his early game infrastructure. He has not had the economy to build up extra barracks or to switch over to Marauders or anything of that sort. So a very tiny standing army from him. And here I'm beginning Ultralisk production, getting all of my Tier 3 upgrades. Very, very important, particularly in an army or in a game like this where unit efficiency is everything. Since it's relatively small economies fighting small economies, efficiency becomes king. So upgrades are just even more important than they normally are. He is also up to +3 weapons on his Marines. Only +2 armor, not getting the 2nd yet because he is so strapped for resources. And here, insufficient static defense, so this drop is very, very annoying. I'm actually forced to pull my entire army back just to deal with it. Shuts down gas mining for a little bit, and that just kind of goes to demonstrate the importance of static defense. Why you absolutely have to have spine crawlers at every base, particularly when playing this style. And so here again, my creep spread not very good at all. It's something that you need to be much more conscious of, something that I've become much more conscious of since this game was played. Creep spread, very, very important, particularly with ground-based styles like this. And here, he knows that his army is now inferior to mine, and that if he were to attack, he would just get absolutely crushed. So he's sitting back, trying to play defensively. And for my part, I know that if he is allowed to sit back and play defensively for too long, he will build up a very big tank army. He will be able to secure this base, or potentially one of the islands. So that means that once I hit a max, once I get my Ultras running, it is important for me to be aggressive and to attack him and to start trading armies and take advantage of my bigger economy. And here we can see him flying down, actually his initial orbital, to take this island base. Right now, at this point, I'm just trying to look for the best angle to engage. Obviously here it's a tiny choke into tanks and a planetary, so there's no way that's going to work. So I swing my army back around, and I realize that this would be a much better area to engage in. It's relatively wide open. There's no planetary there. He's going to have to spread out. And that I pulled his army out of position, so it's not set up in a perfect siege line. And so here we go. His tanks were not sieged. That was the value of pulling his army up here, getting him out of position, and then going into attack. He's all spread out. He's not really well clumped up. He's fighting very inefficiently with the Ultralists. Their splash damage is doing a ton of damage to him. And here he did manage to kind of hold that off. I'm not sure who's actually going to win this battle, but we traded pretty evenly. However, my production is then 4 Ultralists and 66 Zerglings, whereas his is 5 Marines, 3 Marauders, and 2 tanks. I just have such a huge economy relative to him that trading armies at that point is absolutely great for me, even if he was more cost efficient than I was. I lost a lot of Ultralists, but he lost all of his army as well, and then I can replace mine much more quickly. And here we can see a Nidus on the way. That was my chosen method to deal with the islands on this map. There is no block there, so they can't float an orbital down, so that's something you have to be really conscious of. Most maps don't have islands, so that's not usually something that you're going to have to deal with. But on maps where it does exist, obviously that's a very powerful feature for Terran, so you have to be ready to deal with it, either with a Nidus or with air units or with Overlord drops. And now that I see he's pulling back into a more defensive stance, I am starting up my Greater Spire. I do have a pretty big economy running. I'm starting to get a lot of bank. I know I can switch back and forth between techs if need be, which is a very powerful way to play against the Terran opponent. And here, again, I know that my army is just so much more powerful than his at this point, that I can reproduce so much more quickly, that I'm going in and attacking in a relatively terrible situation. You do not want to attack into a wall, into siege tanks versus a Terran. However, I know that I've done so much damage to him that my army is much more powerful, and that I do need to continue to do damage, so I can't allow him to just sit and build up. So I attack into that, and I force a lift on his natural. I kill a lot of SCVs, I kill a lot of units. However, I neglected to rebuild my spine crawler defense here, so he's actually going to go ahead and take that hatchery down, which is pretty big blow for me. That's a big portion of my income, and really sloppy to lose it because there is absolutely no reason to do so. However, I have this base up and running, so I still have a pretty good income to fall back on, and obviously still a massive supply lead, just a much bigger army than him. All he really has running is this base, which doesn't even have gas income yet, plus this, which isn't actually mining. So my economy still dwarfs his. And here again, trying to set up, but again, I'm nearly maxed. I have a lot of really powerful units. Ultras can take a lot of damage. They can run in and soak up the fire and actually get into range and kill that. Instead, I've realized that he's pulled back into a defensive position here and can go in and try and take out his last really big mining base. And Ultras are actually surprisingly good at dealing with planetaries. We see they just deal so much DPS that they beat the SCV's repair rate. And taking out that leaves him with essentially no mining bases, which means this army is all he really has, and that he's going to have to do something with it, which is a very powerful position for me to be in as the Zerg. I know that I just have to beat his army out in the center, or sit back and defend. However, I'm actually moving to be aggressive here, which is not a bad decision, given that I am 80 supply ahead and I have a much better economy. There's no problem with going in for the kill when you know that you absolutely will break him. If this was a closer game, it would be better to sit back and play defensively. However, I know that I can just go in and finish him off here pretty easily, so there's no real reason to wait around and let him try and build up an army or try and drop. And here, obviously, he just does not have enough units to hold, and he GGs. This was an EG replay review. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please go to evilgeniuses.net to find other replay reviews and other content brought to you by Team EG.